Hey everyone, it's Annalie here from Centered Connections. I'm back again this week to deliver your weekly love guidance for Monday the 4th of September through to Sunday the 10th of September. And as I do with every video, I would really like to check in and just get an update on how you're going and how you found last week in regards to the card that I drew, and if any of that actually resonated with you. And I know for myself, last week was a really big week in terms of starting to see some of the unconscious patterns or the unconscious fears that are still playing out in my relationship. And it was actually quite interesting to see, you know, sometimes we have this misconception that when we deal with something, that we deal with it and it's done, and that we don't need to revisit it again. But for myself, and maybe some of you can also chime in on this, I noticed that there were certain things that I had to revisit, or that I was revisiting, that I'd already looked at and sort of dealt with at the time. But I feel like when we get to a point where we're constantly sort of up leveling and constantly growing and evolving, at certain points in time, we come to a new awareness, and sometimes we have situations come up or certain beliefs and fears and patterns that get triggered again. But with that new awareness, we have fresh eyes or fresh lenses to actually see that particular situation through, where prior to that, we may not have had that awareness to be able to see it. So for me, I had to kind of deal with some past trauma, and also from being a little girl as well. There's some things that had happened to me where I actually had to start peeling away some of that trauma that was kind of living in my body, that would have a knee-jerk reaction to certain situations or certain things where I felt unsafe. Unsafe being, unsafe to express, unsafe to be myself, unsafe in the sense of being in my own skin. So there was definitely patterns that I really had to acknowledge and honor, and there's definitely things for me that I'm dealing with where I thought that I had dealt with some of these things, but really I've just come to a new awareness of them, and at the time, however I dealt with it served me, but now because I have a new awareness, it's time to kind of let those things go. And I feel like I'm in this point in time, I feel like I'm on this purge at the moment of emotions that have been stuck in my body that I have completely disconnected from. You know, grief and pain and sorrow and sadness. I'm really starting to connect to those parts of myself that I've rejected to feel, because often we can totally and completely disconnect from one's feelings and disconnect from oneself because it's so painful to actually feel. But I know for myself that if I feel them, for me, I can actually move through the emotion, move through that energy, allow that energy to move through me and out of me, so that I can actually clear myself and those emotions don't get stored, saved for a rainy day or saved for another day where that particular trigger can happen and bring up those same feelings and intensity of feelings all again. So that's kind of where I am at in terms of my journey last week. and it is still continuing, so I'm interested to find out what this week is going to bring for us. So please let me know. I know a few of you reached out last week, and it was amazing to hear how much these weekly videos have supported you. So thank you so much to those of you who did reach out. It's really great for me to be able to get that feedback, because I know that I'm reaching people. I know that I am actually being of service and helping support you through your journey, because I know how hard and difficult it is to navigate through this. So please keep the messages coming. I really like to know how you're going with everything. So with that being said, all that done and dusted, I'm going to get into this week's card. And for some reason, I'm feeling a lot of nervous energy in my stomach. So I'm going to just check into that and see whether I feel like it has to do a lot with self-worth. That's what I'm kind of feeling into at the moment. So let's see what messages we have for this week. So my intention is to connect with those of you who are going to be watching this video. These messages are for you. And again, note that you are watching this at the beginning of the week. I keep getting feedback that at the beginning of the week, people don't actually resonate with it, or people don't see where the connection might be for where they're at in their journey. And it's not until the next week, or where they look back and reflect, that they realize it was all connected. And a lot of the times, the reason I kind of come into this and give you guidance for the week ahead is to kind of give you a heads up of what might be coming your way, so that when it does come your way, you're kind of prepared a little bit. So it still catches people off guard. But yeah, these are a great source of, reflection, like where you can go back and see, what you could have done differently, or whether you did go through and listen to your intuition and just get that guidance from inside of you, from within. So yeah, like go back and watch the video if you missed it last week. Check it out and see if it resonated with you. So keep that in mind for this week. So what have we got for the week ahead? Okay, so the card that I have drawn is Attraction. You attract romantic love by enjoying this moment fully. And that's the card there. And so she's instantly, I feel like, stop and smell the roses. Yeah. So a lot of what's been coming up lately in the energy has been around acceptance. And I know for a lot of people, like the clients that I work with and people around me, friends, have all kind of been going through this transition of being able to accept themselves, accept a situation, accept certain things. Like, we actually suffer because we're not in acceptance, and acceptance has showed up a lot for me in the past few weeks, and I feel like there's a huge emphasis on it this week. And as I kind of reflect on my journey, so for those of you who are single, as I reflect on my journey with Roman, I got into this work, doing all the self work, because my intention was to be happy. I lived a life where I was depressed and anxious all the time. And it was a prison. It wasn't a place that I wanted to go back to. And this past week has moved me into, which is why we're probably talking about acceptance this week, has moved me into a place where before I didn't want to look at that part of my life where I was the victim, or that I blamed others for what I was going through. And a lot of the time I rejected that part of myself, and I didn't want to admit that I was a victim, and that I've moved on from there. I'm on to better pastures. And in saying that, yes, I have moved on, and my life is an absolute reflection of how I was living before to how I'm living now. But that part of myself is still within me. There is a victim within. And the more that I notice, the more that I actually reject that part of myself and not listen or honor that part of myself, and honor how that part of myself feels at certain points in time, it actually causes me more suffering because I'm in resistance to it. So what I've noticed is that the more that I'm okay with being able to express the feelings and emotions of this, of my inner victim, I'm not in judgment. I'm not in judgment of what she's feeling, what she's thinking, how she's dealing with it. I'm just letting her be and letting her move through the emotions, move through what she needs to move through, in order to deal with and let go of the patterning and the fears and the prison that's holding her in this state. So I guess the reason I am sort of talking about this is really just to illustrate how much when we do not accept, so obviously, and you can put this into any situation that you find yourself in. So if you're not accepting of what is, you are constantly going to be chasing that expectation, or chasing the attachment to what you want, instead of what is actually happening and what is. And you are living in the future, and not actually appreciating the present moment. And the energy that you send out to the universe, obviously, then is a lack of what you want. So the universe is going to keep sending you what you don't want, because you're not in appreciation of what is. And so when you aren't in appreciation of what is, then you hold judgments of what is. That it should be another way, that it should be different, it should look different, it should be different, it should feel different. So what I would ask myself is, am I okay with actually not being okay with this situation? And I find that when I do ask myself that, and I admit and acknowledge that I'm not okay, because it's when we're like, oh no, we're okay with what is, but then we're actually not in feeling state of that, and it's not in alignment with what we're actually feeling. And a lot of the clients that I work with, you know, who want relationships, they are constantly chasing this idea of being in a relationship, yet they're not appreciating the time that they have with themselves to get to know themselves, to reflect on the journey that they've been on to get to a point where they're wanting to change things because it hasn't worked for them in the past. And it's like removing those attachments to how this person who is coming into their life, because that's sometimes what gets in the way with people who haven't found that particular person, or that person that they want to spend their life with or to have a relationship with, is that because they're constantly chasing for this ideal that doesn't exist, and they're not in acceptance of what is, which is they're single right now. And if you can't accept being single right now, the universe is going to keep sending you situations where you end up single. You know, so the lesson really here is to accept. And sometimes that can be really, really difficult. And sometimes we don't even know that we have expectations, or know that we even have any attachments to what it needs to look like. And we lie to ourselves. We tell ourselves, yeah, I'm not attached. I'm not expecting anything. Or when you do something for someone else, like, you tell yourself that you don't have attachments, because you have a judgment then on having attachments and what that is. If you're a person that has attachments, you have judgment on that. But if you can accept that, yes, sometimes I'm going to have attachments, and yes, sometimes I'm going to have expectations. But when you do get to that point, don't beat yourself up where you find out that you do have attachments or you do have expectations. Know that that is a very human behavior. And it's not an excuse or a permission for you to start judging yourself for being a person that has attachments or expectations, especially when we're in this day and age of self-work, and working on ourselves constantly, being aware. And sometimes that's a detriment. Sometimes that's a distraction. Sometimes that gets in the way. That's what I've seen in my clients. And that's also what I've seen in myself, where being so aware, the ego can kind of sneak in that way, and start to say, well, you should know better. You know all of this stuff, but why can't you be this type of person? Why do you have to have attachments? Why can't you just let go? And then you start beating yourself up on that side of things. And sometimes you just need to be human. Sometimes you just need to allow yourself to go, fuck me. Sorry, swearing, but fuck me. Like, I'm human. Let me feel. Let me be. This is what we signed up for. We signed up to feel and be, experience everything of what it is to be human. And sometimes we can bypass that spiritually, especially when we have wisdom that, I should know better, and I should be able to let go, and why can't I let go? And then this dialogue just starts in your head, and it takes you on a whole nother tangent. Whereas if you can just accept, seriously, I cannot, I've got attachments here right now. Am I okay with that? And then if you're not okay with it, are you okay with not being okay with it? Because we judge ourselves all the time, and that's a very human conditioning. It's human. But when we can accept, like some of us, we tell ourselves, no, we don't judge. We don't ever judge. And that was me when I first started this journey. I started this journey thinking, I am unconditionally loving. I do not judge. I'm not the type of person that gossips. I'm all of those things, because it's a human thing. We're human. But we lie to ourselves to make us feel better, because we don't accept who we are. We don't accept that we have these emotions. We have a dark side. And this is speaking more so because I have a tendency to want to live in love and light, And when I started this journey, I really had to dive into all the darker parts of me that I couldn't see and I didn't want to accept in myself. And what that's actually done for me is actually I've been able to, when I can accept those things within me, I can actually start to accept those things in other people because they're reflections of me. So anything that annoys me in other people is actually an aspect of myself that I'm not okay with, because we're all of it. So coming back to the acceptance card, and it's not an acceptance card, it's attraction, but the message that I'm getting through is acceptance. And when you can accept and be grateful and live in gratitude for the moment that you're experiencing, and being okay and letting go and surrendering to what is and how it's got to look and how it's got to be, or who that person has to be for you to love them. Let go of all of it and just accept in the moment and take it moment by moment, because you're not always going to be accepting. And that's the thing, like people, and we talk about this with self-love, you have to be self-loving. But to be honest, I'm not self-loving all the time. It's just not possible. I take it moment by moment and I learn from the things that get in the way of me not being self-loving towards myself. And that goes with acceptance as well, because I feel like acceptance is the pathway to self-love. Because when you can accept all of you, like even the parts that are you perceive to be too ugly to look at and to accept and to love, like that is the true pathway to self-love. And it's really helped me, especially with my ex-partner or my former partner. There was a lot of things in our relationship that I didn't like about him, and as I reflect back on it, I see all of the things that he was just showing me and projecting to me, of all the things that I was to myself inside. And when I could accept those aspects of me, I could actually accept him as a person, as the father of my children. And, it's really helped us heal our relationship, because now I can relate to him in a different way to when I was with him and I didn't actually embrace or accept those things within myself. So it all starts from within. And I guarantee you, and I've seen this, I see it, and it happened to me. When you can accept what is, you open the door. You open the door for that love to come into your life when you least expect it. Because you're not living in the future, you're not living on expectations or attachments. You're living in the moment and being grateful for what you have right now, which is then sending that energy to the universe saying, I am so happy right now. Send me more of this. And the universe will find its way to send you more things to be happy about in your life. And that has definitely been my experience, and it's definitely been experience of people that are around me, my friends, clients. So it's a huge one this week. Acceptance is a huge one. And I feel like it really, it's really poignant for the card that I drew last week, which was release your ex, because there might have been situations in your past that you haven't actually come to terms with or have actually accepted. So I would go back, if you haven't watched the video from last week, I would go back to that video and watch it, and see if you can make the connection to this week. So I feel as though, yeah, so the attraction card is really about like living in the moment, and then you attract, you attract that love. Like if you accept and love yourself, you're going to attract someone who is equally as accepting and loving of you. So keep that in mind if you're single, and if you're in a relationship and you're experiencing difficulties at the moment where you are finding it difficult, or you're finding your partner annoying, or they're really getting on your nerves, have a look at where you're not being accepting. Have a look at yourself in terms of where are you not accepting yourself. And then start to dive into that and look a little bit deeper. And when you can shift that, I guarantee you your outside reality, your relationships will completely shift as well to reflect that. So that's it from me this week. It's a little bit of a longer video this week. I feel like acceptance is a huge thing. And some of you might think, how do I do this? Like, how do I accept this? And sometimes it's hard to see on your own, and sometimes you might need someone from the outside to be able to shine a light on your particular situation. So if this sounds like you and you're someone that would really like to explore whether I can support you on your journey, I am offering one-on-one complimentary sessions. So please feel free to contact me. You can PM me, or you can contact me at info@romanandanalee.com. And then we can organize a time to sit down and look at your particular situation and see if I can actually support you in your journey. And please comment, like, tag, share this with anyone you feel might resonate with this and get some value from it. And also I'd love to hear your stories, what you're up to, what's happening. And yeah, so that's it from me this week. I'll be back next week for your weekly love guidance. Until then, be gentle on yourself, accept. That's all I can say. Have a great week, guys. Bye.